she hiding from the marking ritual inside a cave, until the Alpha King came for her. In the heart of that forest, hidden from roads and villages, Lyra ran. Her breaths came in sharp, quick gasps, her feet slipping over roots and rocks as the cold night bit into her skin. She had no plan, no destination, only the desperate need to escape the fate that had been written for her. The marking ritual, the very words made her shiver. It was said that every young woman of the royal province was claimed by the Alpha King, bound to his service by a power older than the kingdom itself. Lyra had seen it once, the cold eyes of those who had been chosen. They were not free. They were shadows of themselves, their spirits tethered, their hearts heavy with a longing they could not name. And she would not be one of them. Her thoughts ran as fast as her legs. I cannot be bound. I will not be bound. The repetition was like a mantra, keeping her fear at bay, though her heart thundered like a drum in her chest. Somewhere ahead, she knew, there might be safety. Somewhere hidden beneath the cliffs that scraped the sky, a cave was rumored to exist, a place of refuge for those who dared to flee. Her grandmother had whispered its location once, many years ago, when Lyra was just a child. She had not believed it then, but now, every word became a lifeline. The forest thickened. Shadows moved like living things, and Lyra's mind conjured images of watchers behind every tree. Her pulse raced, not just from running but from the fear that someone, or something, might already be following her. The marking ritual was not just tradition. It was power, and the kingdom's rulers did not allow defiance. The Alpha King would send hunters, the strongest warriors in the land, to retrieve those who ran. And Lyra knew they would not hesitate. At last, after what felt like endless stumbling through darkness, she reached the cliffs. The jagged rocks loomed above her like silent guardians. She climbed carefully, her fingers searching for handholds in the cold stone. The wind howled, tugging at her hair and clothes, but she did not stop. Finally, she found the cave, a narrow opening hidden behind a veil of vines and shadow. Relief surged in her chest, so strong it made her knees weak. Inside, the cave was cool and damp. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like jagged teeth, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed in the shadows. Lyra sank to the ground, pressing her back against the rough stone. Her legs trembled from exhaustion, and her heart refused to slow. She allowed herself a moment to breathe, to feel the quiet around her. Here, for the first time in hours, or perhaps days, she was hidden. She lit a small lantern she had carried, its light casting a warm glow on the walls. Strange markings lined the stone, faint symbols carved long ago. They seemed to shimmer in the lantern's flame, as if alive. Lyra ran her fingers over them, curiosity momentarily overtaking fear. Who left these here? She wondered. They were intricate, flowing like water over rock, and yet she felt an odd familiarity, as if the symbols spoke to something buried deep within her. Her thoughts drifted to the marking ritual again. The stories said it bound a woman's soul to the Alpha King's will. It was not just a ceremony, it was a force, ancient and unyielding. Lyra had seen glimpses of its power in the eyes of those who had been marked. She shuddered, and yet she also felt something stirring inside her, something restless and unwilling to be tamed. She did not know what it was, but it made her resolve harden. I will not be taken. I will not be marked. Time passed in silence, broken only by the occasional drip of water and the wind brushing against the cave's mouth. Lyra's muscles began to ache from sitting too long, but she did not move. Every sound outside made her flinch. She imagined the Alpha King's hunters combing the forest, their eyes searching, their senses sharp. She was alone, and yet she could feel the weight of destiny pressing against her. She tried to rest, curling into herself, but sleep was a stranger. Her mind wandered to Kale, the Alpha King. She had never seen him in person, but tales of him reached even the smallest villages. Strong, commanding, feared by all, yet there were whispers of a sorrow in his eyes, a burden he carried that no crown could ease. Lyra did not know if she should fear him or pity him. Perhaps both, perhaps neither. The thought made her chest tighten, as if some invisible cord had been pulled. Hours, or maybe it was days, passed. The forest beyond the cave was restless, alive with unseen movements. Lyra dared not venture out, knowing the risk, yet she could not ignore the strange sense that she was being watched. It was not fear alone that gripped her. It was anticipation, a trembling awareness that something was coming, something inevitable. Then she heard it. A soft rustling at the mouth of the cave. Her body froze, every nerve screaming. The sound of footsteps, measured and unhurried, echoed through the cave's entrance. Lyra's hand went to her chest as her breath caught. Whoever approached, they were not like the hunters she had imagined. There was a weight to their presence, a dominance that pressed against her from the shadows. Her mind raced. Hide, move, run, but her body refused. She was rooted to the spot, a mixture of fear and fascination holding her fast. A tall figure emerged from the darkness, silhouetted against the faint moonlight that filtered through the cave's entrance. His movements were deliberate, controlled, and yet there was a grace to them, as if he were both predator and protector at once. "Lyra," the voice said, low and resonant. It carried authority, and yet there was an unexpected softness beneath it. Her heart skipped. She had never heard the Alpha King's voice before, yet somehow it felt as though it belonged to her story, to her life. She wanted to speak, to deny, to run, but the words caught in her throat. "I know why you are here," he continued. "You cannot hide forever." Lyra's pulse thundered. She wanted to turn away, to flee deeper into the shadows, but something about his presence rooted her in place. There was no malice in his eyes, at least, none that she could see, but there was power, immense and undeniable. Power that could crush or protect, and she felt it all around her, pressing in, demanding recognition. Why are you here?" she whispered finally, her voice trembling. He stepped closer, and the cave seemed to shrink around them. "Because it is not only your fate that is at risk. There are forces at work you do not understand, and they are coming for both of us. You may run, but the truth will find you, Lyra. And so will I." Her chest tightened. His words were not a threat, and yet they carried an inevitability that made her stomach turn. She wanted to scream, to fight, to deny everything, but the strength of his gaze held her in place, and with it, a strange spark of trust. Lyra realized, with a shiver, that she was no longer just hiding from the ritual. She was standing at the edge of something far larger than fear, something that might demand her courage, her heart, and the very essence of who she was. The Alpha King, Kale, stood before her, and for the first time in her life, Lyra understood the weight of destiny. It was not just the ritual that awaited her. It was him. And whether she wanted it or not, whether she ran or stayed, the story between them had already begun. And as the night deepened, and the wind whispered through the cave, Lyra could only clutch her lantern and wonder what this meeting would cost her, and what it might awaken within her. The darkness outside pressed against the mouth of the cave, and the faint, haunting glimmer of the markings on the walls seemed to pulse in response to her heartbeat. Somewhere deep in the shadows, something ancient watched, waiting for the moment when courage and destiny would collide. And Lyra knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that she could not hide forever. The cave felt smaller now, as if the presence of Kale, the Alpha King, had filled every corner with a silent weight. Shadows shifted along the walls as his eyes, dark and unwavering, held Lyra in their unspoken scrutiny. She hugged her knees closer, unsure whether to shrink into the darkness or stand and face him. The lantern flickered, casting trembling light across the jagged stones, and the strange markings on the walls seemed to respond to the tension in the room. Kale stepped forward, his boots making no sound on the wet stone floor. There was a deliberate patience in his movements, a quiet power that spoke of years spent commanding armies, taming beasts, and wielding the weight of a crown. Yet beneath the commanding presence, Lyra sensed something else, a deep, restless sorrow, a shadow that even his strength could not entirely hide. "You should not be here alone," Kale said finally, his voice low but firm. It carried the authority of a king, yet beneath it lay a careful gentleness, like a stream hidden under frozen ground. "The ritual was meant to find you, to bind you to a fate that you cannot escape, but you ran." Lyra shook her head, trying to steady her trembling hands. "I will not be bound," she whispered. "I will not belong to anyone against my will." Her words were sharp, a shield against the fear that threatened to engulf her. Kale's gaze softened slightly, though the intensity remained. "I am not here to take you by force," he said. "I am here to tell you the truth. The marking ritual, it is not what they say. It is not just tradition. It is a trap." Lyra's heart caught. "A trap," she repeated, suspicion and curiosity warring within her. "I thought it was sacred. I thought it was meant to honor the bond between the Alpha King and the Chosen." Kale shook his head, running a hand through his dark hair. "It was never meant to honor. It was meant to control. To bind the strongest women to the throne, to draw their strength into the crown, to sustain a curse that has haunted my family for generations." Lyra felt the weight of his words press down on her chest. The cave seemed to grow colder, the shadows stretching as if to listen. "A curse?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "What kind of curse?" "The kind that steals freedom," Kale replied, his voice steady but carrying a hint of regret. "The women chosen are not just marked, they are trapped. Their hearts, their power, their very souls are drawn into the throne's legacy. Without their strength, the kingdom falters. With it, they are lost." Lyra's mind spun. She had known the ritual was feared, whispered about, but she had not understood the full danger. The weight of destiny she had fled from now pressed closer, mingled with a new, strange curiosity. "And if it is a trap, why did he come for me?" Kale watched her as if reading her thoughts. "Because you are different," he said. "The bond that would be forced upon you cannot hold you in place. You have a strength that even the curse cannot touch, not fully. That is why I had to find you before others did." For a moment, silence fell, broken only by the dripping of water somewhere deeper in the cave. Lyra studied him, searching for deceit, for hidden motives. She found none. Not lies, not cruelty, only a heavy burden of truth carried with caution and care. And yet, fear still churned in her stomach. "And what if I do not trust you?" she asked. Kale stepped closer, but he did not reach for her. His presence was enough. "Then I will give you reason to," he said. "I cannot promise the world will not hurt you, but I can promise you will not face it alone." Lyra's pulse quickened. The words were not threats, but they carried the weight of inevitability. She wanted to reject him, to retreat into the shadows, to prove that she could be free. And yet, every instinct told her that she was standing on the edge of something far larger than herself. Something that required courage, even if it terrified her. "You must understand," Kale continued, his gaze sweeping the cave, lingering on the glowing markings. "The curse is older than the throne. It was cast long before my family claimed power. It feeds on submission and fear. Only those who face it willingly can break it." Lyra's fingers traced the carvings on the wall. The symbols seemed to hum faintly, like they recognized her presence. "Break it," she echoed. "Can it be undone?" Kale nodded. "It can, but it is not easy. The curse binds more than the ritual. It binds hearts, minds, and destinies. It will test you in ways you cannot imagine. That is why you must trust, not just me, but yourself." Lyra swallowed hard. Every word, every revelation made her feel smaller and yet more alive. Fear and defiance mingled in her chest, creating a storm she could not tame. She wanted to run, to hide deeper in the cave, but something in Kale's presence stopped her. Not authority alone, but a strange pull she could not explain. "You are brave," Kale said softly, almost to himself, "and stubborn. The two will serve you well if you are willing to endure the trial." Lyra's hands tightened around her knees. "Trial," she whispered, a mixture of curiosity and dread coloring her tone. What will I have to endure?" "The curse will show you fear," Kale said, his voice low and steady. "It will show you weakness, loneliness, and despair. But it will also show you strength, courage, and power you did not know you had. And it will force choices that could bind you or free you." Lyra's chest tightened. The cave, the forest, the distant wind, they all seemed to fall away, leaving only Kale's presence and the weight of destiny pressing against her. She wanted to argue, to resist, but she found herself listening, captivated despite herself. Kale's gaze softened. "I do not ask for blind trust, Lyra, but understand this. If you do not face what is coming, the kingdom will fall and you will be lost to the curse forever." Her heart thundered. The reality of her situation pressed down, heavier than fear, heavier than hope. And yet, something in his voice, in his eyes, it calls to me. She looked around the cave at the glowing symbols that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. The air was thick with unseen energy, ancient and alive. Lyra felt a strange connection, as if the cave itself acknowledged her presence, her courage, her defiance. "Why me?" she asked finally, voice trembling. "Why not someone else?" Kale's eyes darkened. "Because you are not like the others. Your heart, it cannot be easily tamed. And yet, it is strong enough to change everything. The curse did not foresee you." Lyra's mind spun. She felt both fear and a flicker of something new, possibility, a spark of power that was hers alone. "And if I fail?" she asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. "You will not," Kale said firmly. "You may stumble, you may falter, but the courage to rise again, that is what will save you. That is what will break the chains." For a long moment, silence fell. The cave seemed to hold its breath, the shadows waiting. Lyra felt the strange, unspoken bond between them, fragile and undefined, but undeniable. She did not trust him fully, not yet. But for the first time she wondered if she could survive not just the forest, the hunters, or the ritual, but the fate that had always loomed over her. Kale watched her, his eyes searching hers, trying to read the storm of emotions behind them. "Rest now," he said quietly. "You will need your strength for what is coming. But know this, Lyra, you are not alone, and I will not leave you." Lyra nodded, though her heart was still racing. She curled into herself again, letting the warmth of the lantern and the strange comfort of his words wash over her. Sleep did not come easily, but for the first time in many nights, she allowed herself to imagine a future not entirely dictated by fear. Outside, the forest whispered. Somewhere unseen, shadows moved, watching, waiting. And somewhere beyond the trees, forces older than the kingdom stirred, sensing the meeting of courage and destiny within the cave. As the night deepened, Lyra felt a shiver of both dread and anticipation. The Alpha King had found her, but their story had only begun. She could not yet understand the full weight of what awaited her: trials, revelations, and a connection that might change the very course of the kingdom. And in the quiet of the cave, with the wind brushing against its mouth and the faint glow of the ancient markings on the walls, Lyra realized that hiding was no longer an option. The ritual, the curse, the kingdom, they were all coming for her. And so was Kale. But for now, in the fragile light of the lantern, she let herself simply breathe. She let herself wonder. And she let herself feel the first stirrings of a courage that would have to carry her through the storm to come. The forest had grown quiet after the first whisper of dawn. Mist clung to the ground like a pale curtain, and the distant mountains were ghostly silhouettes against a gray sky. Lyra had spent the night in the cave, her mind restless with thoughts she could not escape. Kale had not slept, though he had not spoken much either. The weight of his presence was constant, like the heartbeat of the earth itself, steady and unyielding. Lyra stirred, her muscles sore from sitting in the damp stone. Her thoughts drifted back to the previous night, the truths Kale had spoken, the warnings he had given, and the strange flicker of trust she felt despite the fear that still clung to her. She had expected to feel relief, perhaps even triumph at having survived the forest and evaded the hunters. Instead, there was a new tension in her chest, a mixture of curiosity and dread that made her palms clammy. Kale's voice broke the silence. "You must learn to move without fear," he said, standing near the entrance of the cave. His dark eyes scanned the forest, sharp as a hawk's, but then they softened as they fell on her. "The curse will test you, Lyra, not only outside but within yourself. It will seek your doubts, your regrets, your fears, and only by facing them will you survive." Lyra drew in a deep breath, steadying herself. How do I face something I cannot even see?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You will see it soon enough," Kale replied. "The curse is not subtle. It will manifest in forms that seem real, in shadows that feel alive, and in visions that speak truths you may not want to hear. But remember this, fear is not weakness. How you respond to it is what defines you." Lyra nodded slowly. His words, though heavy, carried a strange warmth, like a lantern guiding her through the darkest night. And yet, doubt still lingered, whispering that she was too small, too fragile, too ordinary to face what was coming. Kale stepped closer, his boots making no sound on the damp cave floor. "You are stronger than you realize," he said quietly, "and stronger than I expected. That is why I came for you, not just to protect you, but because you have the power to change what has been set in motion for generations." Lyra looked into his eyes, searching for the meaning behind his words. "Change the curse?" she asked. He nodded. "Yes. But to do so, you must embrace both your fear and your strength. You cannot hide from either, and you cannot do it alone." For a moment, Lyra simply stared at him, trying to understand the depth of what he was saying. Her chest tightened, and she realized that his presence, once a source of fear, now felt like a challenge she wanted to meet. A strange heat of courage flickered inside her, and for the first time since fleeing the ritual, she felt the faintest spark of hope. You trust me?" she asked, almost afraid of the answer. Kale's expression softened. "Not completely," he admitted. "Trust is earned, not given. But I will give you my guidance, my protection, and my honesty. That is the closest I can come to trust for now." Lyra exhaled slowly. It was not the trust she had hoped for, but it was enough to begin. Enough to make her take the first step into the forest, away from the safety of the cave and into the unknown. The forest seemed different in daylight, though no less dangerous. Mist clung to the branches, and shadows seemed to stretch in unnatural ways. Every rustle, every snap of a twig set her nerves on edge. Kale walked beside her, silent and alert, his presence both a comfort and a reminder of the power she was now entwined with. They walked in silence for a long while, the only sounds their careful footsteps and the distant call of birds. Lyra's mind wandered to the markings on the cave walls, the strange symbols that seemed to hum in rhythm with her heartbeat. She wondered if they were connected to the curse, to Kale, or to something deeper, something within herself. After a time, Kale stopped near a clearing. Sunlight filtered through the mist, creating an ethereal glow. "You must learn to control what lies within you," he said, gesturing to the open space. "The curse will find it, test it, and try to turn it against you. But if you can focus, if you can shape your power, it will become your weapon rather than your weakness." Lyra took a deep breath. "Weapon? I don't even know what I have." "You will," Kale replied, "but you must first confront your fear. Close your eyes, Lyra. Feel the forest around you. Let your instincts guide you, not your doubts." She hesitated, then obeyed. The mist swirled around her, cool and damp. Her pulse quickened, and she closed her eyes, focusing on the sounds, the smells, the rhythm of the earth beneath her feet. Slowly, a sense of awareness began to grow, an instinctual connection to the world around her. The rustle of leaves, the shift of shadows, even the distant movement of the unseen, she felt it all. Kale watched her carefully, his expression unreadable. "Good," he said softly. "Now let it flow through you, do not resist it. Let it guide your movements, your choices, your mind." Lyra felt a strange warmth, like light breaking through darkness, spreading from her chest outward. The fear that had been clutching at her heart loosened, replaced by a trembling awareness of something powerful within. It was not complete control, but it was enough to make her feel capable, alive. Suddenly, the forest shifted. Shadows deepened, twisting into shapes that seemed almost human. Whispers, faint and urgent, filled the air, tugging at her mind. Lyra's eyes snapped open and she stumbled back, heart racing. Kale's hand was on her shoulder instantly, steadying her. "Focus," he said, his voice calm and commanding. "Do not let them control you. They are illusions, tests. Do not fear them. Fear is their weapon." Lyra clenched her fists, drawing in a deep, shuddering breath. She remembered his words, the warmth spreading from within, the spark of courage. Slowly, the shadows seemed to lose shape, dissolve into mist, leaving only the quiet forest. "You see," Kale said, his gaze meeting hers, "you are stronger than the curse believes, stronger than you believe, but this is only the beginning." Lyra nodded, swallowing hard. She felt both exhilarated and terrified. The forest no longer felt entirely hostile, yet she knew it held dangers she could not yet see. The curse was patient. It would return, and she would have to face it again. As they continued through the mist, Kale shared more of what he knew. The curse had been cast centuries ago by a sorceress who had sought revenge on the royal line. It fed on fear, submission, and despair, twisting the hearts of those who were bound to it. Only courage, trust, and resilience could break it. And Lyra, he believed, had all three, though she did not yet realize the full extent. Hours passed. The forest seemed endless, but Kale's guidance kept them safe. They encountered strange creatures, spirits of the forest, perhaps, or manifestations of the curse itself. Each was a test, subtle and unnerving, challenging Lyra's courage and her growing control over the power awakening inside her. At one point, a shadow lunged from the mist, coiling like smoke, attempting to grasp her fear. Lyra froze, heart hammering, and for a moment panic took hold. But Kale's voice cut through the fog. "Remember yourself. You are not theirs to claim." Lyra focused, reaching into the warmth within her chest, into the spark that Kale had helped her discover. Slowly the shadow recoiled, dissipating like mist under sunlight. Lyra staggered back, gasping, but a smile trembled on her lips. She had faced it and survived. Kale studied her with something unreadable in his eyes. Pride, relief, perhaps both. "Good," he said simply. "This is the path. The curse will test you again and again, but each time you endure, you grow stronger. Each time you learn what it means to be free." Lyra's mind swirled. She was tired, sore, and still afraid, but she also felt alive in a way she had never known. The fear was not gone, but she had discovered something new: courage, resilience, and the faintest sense of control over her own destiny. As the day waned, they reached a small glade, surrounded by ancient trees whose branches twisted toward the sky like pleading hands. Kale set up a small camp, lighting a fire that cast a golden glow over the mist. The shadows seemed less threatening here, less alive, and Lyra felt a momentary sense of peace. Sitting by the fire, Kale watched her quietly. "You have done well today," he said. "But there is more to learn, more to face, and soon the curse will become bolder. You must be ready." Lyra looked into the flames, the dancing light reflecting in her eyes. I think I can do it," she whispered, almost to herself. "I want to try." Kale nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "That is all I ask. Courage does not mean absence of fear. It means facing fear and moving forward despite it. You have taken the first step." The night deepened, and the forest around them seemed to exhale a long, quiet breath. Somewhere in the distance, shadows stirred, watching, waiting. And yet, for the first time, Lyra did not feel entirely alone. Kale's presence, steady and unyielding, was a shield and a guide. And the spark within her, fragile but real, was a light that the darkness could not easily extinguish. But the curse was patient, and the trials were far from over. As she drifted into a fitful sleep, Lyra felt a strange stirring in the pit of her stomach, a whisper, a shadow, a hint of what was to come. The forest held secrets, the curse held power, and Kale held truths she could not yet fully grasp. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, the first real challenge of the curse was already awakening, waiting for the moment to test her courage and the bond forming between them. Lyra tightened her cloak around her shoulders, staring into the fire's glow one last time before sleep claimed her. She knew that tomorrow would bring more shadows, more tests, and more truths. And she knew, deep in her heart, that the path forward would demand everything she had, and perhaps more than she ever imagined she could give. But she was no longer hiding. Not completely. The night fell like a heavy curtain over the kingdom. Stars fought through the clouds but only scattered pale light across the landscape. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it an old, distant memory of power, of curses, and of fate. Lyra stood at the edge of a great clearing, her chest tight with anticipation, the faint glow of lanterns from the distant castle flickering like distant fireflies. This was the place where the marking ritual had been performed for centuries, a ritual meant to bind, to test, and to seal destinies. Beside her, Kale, the Alpha King, watched silently. His dark eyes reflected both concern and determination. The night had been long, filled with tests of courage, shadows of fear, and whispers of ancient magic. Lyra had faced each challenge with growing strength, but the ritual would be the ultimate test. She knew it, he knew it, and neither could turn back now. "Are you ready?" Kale asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. There was no judgment in it, only steady certainty. Lyra swallowed hard. I think I am," she said, though her heart hammered against her ribs like a wild drum. She knew fear still lingered, but it was tempered by the courage she had discovered within herself. The forest, the shadows, the illusions, they had shown her what she could endure, what she could control. Kale nodded once. "Good. Remember, the ritual will not bind you if you are unwilling. You must choose it. But in doing so, you claim your power as well. The curse cannot hold what you truly control." Lyra's fingers brushed the pendant around her neck, a small charm her grandmother had given her long ago. It was meant for protection, for courage, but now it felt like a symbol of choice, of destiny. She inhaled deeply, letting the cold night air fill her lungs, grounding herself. Together, they stepped forward into the clearing. Torches burned around the circle of stones, ancient and weathered, each etched with the symbols of the kingdom's history. The air was thick with unseen energy, humming faintly as if the stones themselves were alive, aware of what was about to unfold. Lyra felt a shiver run down her spine. This was more than a ritual. It was a test of courage, of will, of heart. Kale raised his hand, tracing a line in the air. Shadows responded, forming delicate patterns of light and darkness that danced across the clearing. The curse stirred, ancient and patient, seeking to find weakness in Lyra's heart. Whispers curled around her mind like smoke. Doubt, fear, hesitation. "You are not enough," they hissed. "You will fail." Lyra's pulse quickened. The shadows seemed to reach for her, curling around her legs, brushing her arms, tugging at her very thoughts. She faltered for a moment, heart hammering, eyes wide. But then she felt it, the spark within her, the light Kale had helped her discover, the courage she had earned through trials of shadow and fear. She gripped it, drew it deep into her chest, and let it radiate outward. "I am enough," she whispered. "I choose my own path." The shadows recoiled like mist in sunlight. The whispers faltered. The curse had found its first real resistance. Kale's eyes softened, but he did not interfere. This was Lyra's moment, her choice. Slowly, deliberately, she stepped into the center of the stone circle. The ground beneath her feet pulsed faintly, responding to her resolve. She could feel the energy of the ritual, ancient and heavy, brushing against her, testing her. Every instinct screamed to run, to hide, to let fear dictate her actions. But Lyra planted her feet firmly, raised her chin, and met the darkness with steady eyes. Kale's presence was beside her, calm and steady. He did not hold her, did not shield her from the challenge. Instead, he radiated strength, offering it as support, letting her know that she was not alone. Lyra drew courage from him, but the choice remained hers. The ritual began in earnest. Shadows writhed across the stones, forming shapes of those who had failed before. Faces of fear, sorrow, and despair twisted and shifted, reaching for her heart, trying to sap her resolve. Lyra felt herself trembling, her mind teetering on the edge of panic. But she remembered the lessons of the forest, the power of awareness and control she had cultivated. She focused on her heartbeat, on the warmth of her chest, on the fire that had been lit within her through trials past. "I am not yours," she whispered to the shadows. "I am mine." And in that moment, something remarkable happened. The energy around her shifted. The stones glowed faintly, symbols shimmering in response to her courage. The shadows hesitated, then began to dissolve, retreating like smoke under sunlight. Lyra felt a surge of power, not forced upon her but rising from within, as if her own heart and spirit had become the source of the ritual's energy. Cale watched, pride and awe flickering across his expression. "Good," he said softly. "You are claiming your power." The curse, sensing resistance it had not anticipated, struck one final time. A massive shadow, darker than the night, surged toward her, coiling like a serpent and whispering her deepest fears: loss, failure, despair. Lyra stumbled, her knees hitting the stone, her breath catching. But then she remembered Cale's words: "Courage is not absence of fear, but moving forward despite it." She rose, trembling but unbroken, and faced the shadow head-on. The light within her flared, bright and steady, and the shadow shrieked, dissipating in the glow. Lyra felt the pulse of energy around her shift, calming. The curse had been resisted, its hold weakened for the first time in generations. Cale stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "It is done," he said. "You have faced it, you have endured. The curse is broken, not completely, but it is no longer absolute." Lyra sank to her knees, exhausted, but a faint smile touched her lips. She could feel the freedom coursing through her veins, the weight of inevitability lifting. The ritual had tested her, the curse had challenged her, and she had emerged stronger, unbound, and alive in a way she had never known. Cale knelt beside her, his dark eyes gentle, unwavering. "You have changed more than the curse tonight," he said. "You have changed yourself, and in doing so you have changed me." Lyra looked up at him, her heart stirring with emotions she could not name. The fear that had gripped her for so long was replaced by gratitude, respect, and a growing bond she could no longer deny. I couldn't have done it without you," she whispered. Cale shook his head. "No, this was yours to face. I guided, I protected, but the strength, the courage, that was yours alone. Remember that." They rose together, standing in the glow of the torches and the fading shadows. The forest around them seemed to exhale, the ancient trees swaying gently as if acknowledging the victory of courage over fear. Lyra felt a connection to the world she had never felt before, alive, aware, and free. For a long while they walked in silence through the clearing, the stars beginning to pierce the clouds above. Lyra's steps were lighter, her chest freer. The ritual had ended, the curse had been challenged, and yet she knew the story was not entirely over. The power she had claimed, the courage she had nurtured, would continue to grow. And Cale, the Alpha King who had come for her, was no longer merely a figure of authority or fear. He was an ally, a witness, and perhaps something more. As they reached the edge of the forest, Lyra paused, glancing back at the circle of stones, the torches flickering in the mist. She could feel the echoes of the ritual, the lingering energy, and the faint hum of the curse, subdued but not entirely gone. It was a reminder that courage was not a single moment but a constant choice, and she was ready to make that choice every day for herself. Cale's gaze met hers, steady and unreadable. "The kingdom will notice changes," he said. "And there will be those who challenge you, the crown, and even me. But you are not the same Lyra who ran into the forest. You are stronger, and you will face them not as a victim but as a force of your own making." Lyra nodded. The fear was not gone entirely, but it no longer controlled her. She could feel her own power, her own courage, her own agency. The bond she shared with Cale was no longer one of obligation, but of mutual respect and understanding. Together, they had confronted the shadows, faced the curse, and claimed something greater than either had expected. The night deepened, stars sparkling faintly in the clearing above. The wind carried the scent of rain and earth, the promise of a new beginning. Lyra and Cale stood together, silent but connected, aware that the trials had not ended, but confident that they would face them side by side. And in the quiet, the final remnants of the curse seemed to fade, leaving only the soft pulse of ancient magic, the glow of the stones, and the enduring bond between courage and choice. Lyra had been tested, and she had emerged whole, free, and transformed. The kingdom awaited, but she was ready.